The greatest comic book scam in history is currently coming to light. I'm here to talk about what we, the community, can do to be proactive, to keep us mentally healthy, and how all of this relates to a concept invented by a Soviet astrophysicist from the 1950s. You heard that right. What is up, guys? Welcome to the Paper Chase channel. Merry Christmas to you all and happy holidays to everybody else. This is a dark time and a very typically bright time of the year. So if you're already not caught up on the entire CGC reholder scandal, this video is not going to be about what happened. This video is going to be about what can happen and what I hope happens. First, I want to give credit where credit is due. That is to the 9.9 Newsstand for bringing to light probably the greatest comic book scam in history. Also Swagglehaus, who did an amazing job covering the scam and the content, and also Ryan from Automatic Comics, who uncovered some definitive evidence that kind of seals this as an ongoing scam from a particular seller. This is major. This stuff is going to reach into maybe the millions of dollars of fraud. And this entire thing really could not have come at a more worse time. In our brief recap, basically what's going on is Certified Guarantee Company, their labels and their integrity as a comic grading company is completely in jeopardy right now due to manipulation of the certification and then the book that's inside the encapsulation here. I've explained on previous videos in the past where I actually advocate for third-party grading that, number one, besides the grade itself and even the protection aspect of grading comics, the biggest thing about these companies is that this is a certificate saying that this book is what it says that it is. And that number one rule is now being compromised and been put to question on the number one grading company that there is out there. So again, if you're new, a particular seller on eBay for some time now has figured out how to manipulate books to coincide with certain labels, thus increasing the values. I'm not going to get into what they did or how they did it. At this point, it's really old news, and there's a lot of other great content creators that have covered it. Go watch their videos. So the system has been compromised. Our trust is broken. Now what? What do we do as comic collectors? So if you know that you're somebody that's going to be emotionally, mentally weighed down by this entire thing right now, honestly, if you're that kind of person, I would pretend at this point that none of this has happened. Go spend time with your family and come back to this, maybe after the first of the year with a fresh mindset. And once we know more from CGC, because for you to ruin this time of the year, a very family-oriented time of the year, by the comic collecting hobby, I think would be just an additional tragedy. But maybe if you have some of these books in your personal collection, or if you're, if you bought from the particular seller in the past, right now could be a good time for you to kind of do your own investigation. Make sure that, none of your books appear to have been tampered with. Make sure there's no duplicate serial numbers or certification numbers out there. Do your own detective work for your own personal collection. Number three, I wouldn't send any books to CGC at this point. I'm not sending them anything else until they give a response in which I personally considered to be up to the standards of what I thought they were before the light of this entire scandal. And number four, this is major. This goes with mindset. Where should your mindset be right now as a comic collector when something that you've put a lot of trust in is now completely different? A very important thing to keep in mind is that this does not discredit third-party grading. Because of what happened here, I don't now disbelieve in the idea of getting a book graded. What this has done is just show a flaw in CGC's system. Keep in mind that where there is currency, there is counterfeit. Frank Abagnale, I'm sure you've seen the movie Catch Me If You Can, the greatest fraudulent check writer in the history of the world. Once he figured out the perfect way to counterfeit checks, the U.S. did not do away with checks. The Federal Reserve and banks did not do away with checks after that. They found a way to make checks better. So keep in mind, it's not a flaw in the concept of grading. It's a flaw in the system of which CGC has. CGC already had a system in place that stated if you submit a book to CGC for a reholder, they're basically going to examine the case of that book. And if that case looks like it's been opened, tampered with in any kind of way, or damaged in any kind of way, that the book inside would undergo the grading process completely. So that means one of two things. Of course, this is all speculation, theoretical, hypothetical, not pointing any fingers at anybody, but just saying with their system, the only way that this could have happened, two ways. One, somebody on the CGC end gets the book, disregards that standard on purpose, lets the book go through to get reholdered, now comes back as a different notified book worth a lot more money. Or number two, it's a complete mistake. So they're not doing a good enough job investigating the case, and they're letting it go through anyway. But whatever the case may be, it seems that the people on the reholdering end of CGC are the ones that have dropped the ball of not going through the correct protocol once they get these fraudulent books in their possession. If there's one thing I can 100% say about CGC's cases, is that they are definitely able to be compromised. Not maybe so much as like PGX, but I mean I've popped one of these open with my bare hands on a podcast before. It's also important too to keep in mind that it wasn't just one way that this person is scamming the system here. It is definitely in multiple ways. Ignore the naysayers. There's going to be people right now that already have condemned third-party grading. And this is just the excuse that they needed to basically say, I told you so, this is why you can't trust third-party grading, this and that, and they're going to use this as basically a base for their argument from here until the end of time of why somebody should never grade their comic books. And I'm still here to tell you that's complete bullshit. Counterfeiting, I promise, was a thing before CGC. The Cerebus 1 comic book underwent a huge counterfeit. Ninja Turtles #1 underwent a huge counterfeit. There were thousands and hundreds of possibly thousands of dollars that were lost due to people buying counterfeit comic books in the raw. Again, it's not a flaw in the concept, it's a flaw in the system. Don't let anti-grading people make you think that you've wasted your money. You still believe in the preservation of comic books, like how they appear, or believe that having a general consensus to grade your book is greater than having a random comic seller grade your book. If you still believe that, hold true to that, and then keep getting your books graded. Just go with a trusted company. The next thing, and this is something that Swagglehaus touched on in his newest video, which I 100% agree, is if you're in the financial position, seize the moment of the low point that we are in right now in the comic collecting community. With the fall of the MCU, the all-time low there, the all-time low in collecting, the market crash, the CGC scandal. I mean, guys, things are worse than they've been, maybe ever. And books can be had at extremely affordable prices right now, and right now is definitely a time if you have certain books that you have your eye on that you were waiting to hit a certain price point, I would do some searching right now and see if any of those books have now fallen into your budget, because the chances are a lot of them are going to start to. And then the final tip, the abstract connection, the yarn of string between the two dots. Nikolai Kardashev, which is a 1950s astrophysicist, and the comic book collecting hobby. Where the hell am I going with this shit? So Nikolai Kardashev basically back in the 50s created this concept of civilization type. But basically his concept in studying energy and trying to reach other intergalactic life forces and civilizations was that he basically was able to categorize different types of civilizations based off of how they obtain and use their energy. And so, for instance, like a type 1 civilization is able to use the energy that's on their planet and all the resources on their planet and then the nearby sun. And by using all this energy, by perfecting that, right, they can control the weather. They can jump from planet to planet in, very short times. It's almost like, picture like a Wakanda type of lifestyle, a Wakanda type of technology, right? That's like a type 1 civilization. And the point of this is that once the type 1 civilization evolves to eventually a type 4 civilization, the type 4 civilization becomes immortal. They are now learning how to harness energy and stuff like that from all of the different surrounding galaxies that puts off ambient energy. And they can use and harness this energy. And at this point, there is no more death. Communication is almost on a Xavier type level of instant mind-to-mind transfer. That's how advanced they are, right? What the hell does this have to do with comics? So it's to be said that when transitioning in these types of civilizations, currently Earth right now, us human beings are a type 0. We're not even a type 1. We're still using dead fossils and plants for our energy source. But what he said is the hardest part from going from a type 0 civilization to a type 1 civilization is the distribution of nuclear power, basically, to those that don't deserve it and that are not fit to wield it. Again, this relates to comics with the entire saying of, with great power, there must also come great responsibility, right? Basically, what happens is that it's very hard for a human species to make it to a type 1 civilization, because once the technology starts to advance, the wrong people are going to get their hands on that and basically cause a self-destruction of that species or of that race. That is that threshold that is the hardest threshold to surpass. If you take that same concept and you implement that into comic books started very simply as books of paper that is meant to be read for enjoyment. It was so simple. Now we're at a time where technology has advanced, right? We're at this breaking point of this type 1 civilization. Artists can create art quicker. Publishers can produce art faster and put them onto shelves quicker. And they're not thinking about the implications of how it's hurting the hobby to do so with such little care behind it. Look at some of the recent cover art that has come out in the past, few months. That looks like the artist did it on, an iPad tablet while sitting on the toilet. All of this is due to the easement of technology and a rush to distribute. It's becoming too easy to produce, and the effort is getting lost. And when there's effort, there's passion. And when all of that comes out of art, then you've just got crap. So that's one example, and then you have a company like CGC coming along, that are meant to advance the hobby itself. It's like I've said in my other video where I talk about the benefits of third-party grading. Comic book grading to me is a symptom of a hobby that is advancing because it is a natural progression of a hobby in which its collectibles have gained and maintained value over long periods of time. And keep in mind, comic collecting and comic reading are two different things. I'm talking about the comic collector. If you are somebody who likes to store your books away and you like to revisit them and rehold them in your possession, that's a collector, not a comic reader. You can be both, but there's a difference between the two. So when a company like CGC comes along and they're able to advance the collecting hobby, their implications hold a lot more weight than something like maybe an Overstreet price guide or something like that. So what happens when you have a company who's graded millions of comic books, and all of a sudden now, because of one bad egg, one bad cog in their comic grading clock, puts a question on the system, now that jeopardizes the collecting civilization as a whole. Let's even go to the MCU, right? MCU evolved from putting out just a couple of movies a year to now multiple projects a year, and they're able to produce it quicker. In streaming and things like that, they're able to push it out quicker. So again, all of this pertains to the advancements in technology and the regression in care and passion, right? So the question remains, can we, the collectors, see through the hard times that we were going through, knowing that we cannot give up on our hobby? No matter what MCU movie comes out, no matter what comic grading empire rises or falls, I think a lot of people just kind of forget that that the most simplest form of physical media is standing up against the greatest exponential growth of technology that any generation has seen. Things are moving at an insanely fast rate, and we are here still trying to keep books in our hands. But like Swag said in his video recently, if you keep your eye on the prize and don't let any of this deter you from collecting, we're going to be okay. So that's my kind of current state of mind, and I hope that maybe some of that philosophy and crazy physicist talk, I know it might sound like it's out of left field, but I think a lot of it relates to each other. If you can jump on board with that mindset and realize that that is kind of the battle that we as collectors are facing, then it's an easy win. I just want to kind of put something out there that was maybe a little more uplifting with a light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully your books are what they say they are. Everybody just kind of keep an eye out and see what CGC is going to say. And may you guys have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. And see you on the next page.